Hi everyone, this is Ravi. Welcome to Katalon automation tutorial. As you all know, I've already published part 1 of CICD integration. In part 1, I've covered about Katalon runtime engine and then how can you execute your Katalon scripts by using command line. So that functionality is important for our CI/CD integration. Okay, so this is our part 2 of CI/CD integration where I'm going to discuss how can we integrate your Katalon Studio with GitHub so that we can upload our code base to the remote repository called GitHub. Please do subscribe to the channel, click on bell icon, you'll receive notifications whenever I publish more videos. Okay, so as I told you, part 1 we have already covered how can you run your test cases by using command line execution. And this is our part 2 where I'm going to teach you how can you integrate Katalon Studio with GitHub so that your test scripts or entire code base can be checked into GitHub repository. And then I'm going to teach how can you integrate Katalon Studio with CI/CD tools like test ops and Jenkins. And in part 4, I'm going to talk about how can you run your Katalon automated tests in test ops or Jenkins by using the code base that we checked into GitHub in part 2. So now let's understand how can we check in the code into the GitHub. How can you integrate Katalon Studio with GitHub? So before we move forward, let us first understand why do we need a remote repository like GitHub. Let's assume your team is working in a remote system and that remote system is having a Katalon Studio installed. So then only one person can work at a time and we cannot maintain any change history, right? In the system, you cannot maintain any change history. And also, because there is no change history, you cannot revert any code to earlier state. And let's assume if your team members are 5 members, let's assume, okay, they take a copy of the code and they want to work in their individual machines, then you will have to maintain multiple copies of the code and you don't know which is the master branch, right? Basically master code base. So it's very difficult for us to maintain multiple copies of the code. And also, if you're working on your local machine, you cannot integrate to any CI/CD pipelines. So that is where this remote repository GitHub comes into picture. Okay. So now, how can you integrate Katalon with GitHub? First of all the team members need to enable Git integration in Katalon. So I'm going to teach you how can we enable the Git integration by using Katalon. Okay, and then you need to put a copy of project on remote repository like GitHub. Let's say if you are having a repository for your existing project. If it is a new project, of course, your remote repository will be empty. If it is not new project, if you have any base code, right, you will be moving a copy of your project to the remote repository. If it is a new project, yes, you are going to create a empty remote repository in GitHub. And then everyone in your team will have to clone above project from remote GitHub to their local machine. And then everyone can now start working on their local copies. And anyone can commit. So now 5 members together at a time can work on their local copies and then anyone can commit and push the changes to remote GitHub. And now the automation code base is available in remote repository so that you can integrate your remote repository with CI/CD tools. And whenever you make modifications by using Katalon in your local machine, Immediately you can push your latest code to your GitHub, and then immediately you can run your CICD pipelines from your GitHub codebase. Okay, so now let's jump onto the system and see how can we integrate Katalon Studio with GitHub. Okay, so this is my Katalon. Okay, so here what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna first create a new project. Okay, let us create one new project. Okay, and here we name this as um, CICD Katalon CICD tutorial. Okay, I'll just name this as, and then I'm using web application. Okay, and then click on OK. So as soon as you create a new project, an empty project will be created in Katalon. Okay, so let's go here. Okay, this is your empty project. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so let it be. Okay, this is your empty project. Okay, I don't have any test cases, right? I don't have any object repositories. Now let's go back to our slide. What is our all team members need to enable Git integration in Katalon? First, let's go back here. Let us first understand. So my Git integration is already enabled. I can see a Git option here. But in case if you don't see the Git option, you need to go to Windows, Katalon Studio Preferences. And here, if you see under Katalon, you have a Git. And here you need to enable Git integration checkbox needs to be checked. And click on apply and close. This will show you an icon, Git icon on Katalon Studio. Okay, so that is done. We have enabled our Git integration in Katalon. Now put a copy of project on remote repository like GitHub. But here I don't have any remote repository because it's my new project. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a repository now. I'm going to create a new repository, empty repository. Okay, so to create a new project, new repository in GitHub, let me first select new repository, new. Okay, as soon as you click on new, it will ask you to provide the name of the repository. What I'm going to do, CICD, what I'll do, Katalon CICD CICD tutorial. Okay, I'm going to specify this. Okay, so this is my new repository in GitHub. Okay, and then click on create repository. Okay, as soon as you click on create repository, an empty repository will be created. Now everyone in the team has to perform the next step. Okay, what? So put a copy. That means we have created an empty repository in GitHub. Now everyone will clone above project from remote GitHub to their local machine. So this is my remote GitHub, which is empty project, and this is my URL. You need to copy this URL, okay, to clone your project. Copy the URL, okay, and now let's go back to Katalon. How can I clone the remote repository just now we created? Okay, let's go to Katalon, and here click on clone project. As soon as you click on clone project, it will ask you to enter the remote URL, repository URL. Let's copy this. I'm going to paste this here. Okay, this is my remote repository URL. And it's going to ask you to enter the username and your password. For what? Your username and password for GitHub. Okay, you need to have GitHub credentials. Okay, and then click on next. It's gonna tell you that your source Git repository is empty. Okay, yes, because we just created a repository in GitHub which is empty. Now I understand this, and now let's click on next. And here now it is showing you what is your, see, whatever the remote repository you are cloning, right, to which local folder you want to clone. So I want to clone in my machine under git slash Katalon CICD tutorial. Okay, I want to clone here. Okay, so now it's going to clone the empty project to your local machine. If you see, now your project location is changed. Your project location is users Ravi K get, right? So basically the location whatever we provided. Now your entire project is cloned from here. Now let me just quickly create one new test case. Okay, just create one sample test case saying that, let's say, login test case. I'm creating a very simple sample login so that I can check in this code and show you the remote repository. Okay, now let's say I'm team member A. I want to quickly record, I want to automate login function. Okay, let's say I record this. It opens your Katalon demo website, which is healthcare website. Okay, so let's expand this. Now let's click on, I want to click on here and then click on login. Now I want to log in, and then this is my password, and click on login. That's it, done. Now close this. I want to stop recording. Okay, now I want to save this script. Let's save the script in the object repository. Okay, done. So if you see, now I have one test case, and then I have an object repository for the test case. All the controls are stored, and I have one test case. Correct? Now I want to check in the code. So let's go to Git and then click on commit. As soon as you click on commit, it should show all the files that are available in the project because we never checked in our code base, correct? So now see, unchanged changes. These are all unstaged changes. We have not staged them to GitHub. So Control A to select all unstaged changes, drag them and drop into staged changes. I want to push them to GitHub. And now mention first code base with login automation. Okay, now you can click on commit and push. As soon as you click on commit and push, what it will do, so it is asking, this is your remote. I know from remote you are actually pushing to master. Yes, I want to push to master branch, and then you click on next. Okay, and this is my master branch, correct? And this is my remote repository. That is what, right? This is our remote. If you see here, this is my remote URL, correct? And then click on finish. So all your changes are now committed to GitHub. Let's go back here and refresh this. Now I should see all my code changes. See, now I can see entire Katalon scripts. If I go to test cases, I should see my login test case. See, this is my login test case. If I go to repositories, sorry, object repository, I should see my repository now. See here, this is what my repository contains. And these are the objects, and these are my objects, correct? So that means now my entire code base, right? Whoever team member A, whatever the changes he performed, that is available now. So now let's say I want to I'll do one thing. I want to um, change this code. I want to make a change, or I want to delete this test case. Let's assume I want to delete this test case. Just to delete this test case. Delete it. And now I want to commit the changes. See, as soon as I delete it, it clearly says there are two changes. Now let's commit this. How? Drag these unstaged changes to staged changes and removed login test case and commit and push. So now if I refresh, I should not see this test case folder. Refresh this. So now there is no test cases. Correct? Perfect. So now let's assume your team member B. I am team member A. Okay. Now team member B has made some changes to the code base in his local machine, and he pushed code to this repository. Let's assume, let's make a small change in git ignore. Let's make a small change in git ignore. I want to remove this one. Okay. Edit this. I want to remove .snv. Okay. And commit changes. Okay. Directly I'm committing to master branch. So now in repository, let's assume this change has been done by team member B. Now if you see here git ignore, I have snv as well. Correct? Now I want to bring the latest changes of GitHub. Next day I came to the office. Now I don't know how many team members changed the code base, how many team members uploaded, checked in their latest code to the GitHub, right? Now as soon as I come to office in the morning, first you need to get your latest code. How can you get your latest code to your local machine? For that you need to go to here and then you need to click on pull. I'm gonna pull the latest code. It is asking me, yes, remote branch is master remote branch, right? And then you need to click on finish. What it will do, it's gonna say, yes, this is your master, right? And here click OK. Now your latest changes are available for you to check out. So now what you do, you again go here. Now you need to go to manage branches and check out branches. This will bring the latest code for you. See, update git ignore, right? Click on OK. So now if you see, now you have a latest code changes. See, you don't have the last command. That means now you have the latest code from your GitHub. You understand? So, and now let's say I want to again create one new test case. Simple. Okay. Login. Click OK. So my new test case is done. Now I created new test case. Now I want to push these changes as a team member A. Created an empty test case folder for login and click on commit and push. So done. Now if you refresh here, you should see those comments. If you see here, now you should see test case. So now I can see test case folder and see here what is the comment. It says created an empty test case folder for login. That means team member A just now checked in. See, if you see now checked in these two changes. Okay, so this way everyone from your team can now start working on their local machine and they can start working on their own test cases to automate. Let's say I am automating login. The other person can start automating registration page. The other person can start automating appointment page, right? And then they can push their own code by end of the day to GitHub. And then next day morning again, if I pull all the changes, I should bring all the latest code changes, login, registration, and appointment. And everything will be available for every team member. Okay, hope you all understand how can you integrate your GitHub with your Katalon Studio, and then how can you push or how can you integrate your remote repository with your Katalon Studio, and then how can you start automating your test cases, and then how can you push your code changes to GitHub. Okay, so this is our part 2. So once you are familiar with this part 2, now we can discuss on part 3, where I'm going to talk about how can you integrate your Katalon Studio with CICD pipelines, so that whatever the latest code base that is available in your GitHub can run by using CI/CD tools like Jenkins desktops. Okay, so now let's stay tuned, and then please do subscribe to the channel. Click on bell icon. You'll receive notifications whenever I publish more videos. Thank you.